Um, the beginning of today's gospel says, preach to all creatures the gospel. Well, we've come to understand that in ecological terms now, which means you just be kind to all creatures in their ecological context. So you have to keep that in mind. And you preach the gospel to human beings the same way. You be kind to everyone. And hospitality, certainly, as our director Spirit General, we used to call the Supreme Leaders, said in his homily during the recent convocation, that hospitality certainly has been part of our charism, of being kind to those who meet and kind to the nature around us. So these are nice ways of contextualizing mission. But looking at, I like to look in my old age at the history of mission. I arrived here at a time where, if we look at the history of the Hebrew people, leaving Egypt and going through the desert and coming to the promised land of a vibrant life there. The passage, they needed at certain times manna in the desert and quail and water to get through the hard times of the desert. They needed that at certain times. And the Columbians began in the Philippines and many other countries, Korea, as manna. We came in to take care, while there was no local priest and local church established. We helped in the parishes in a very necessary way. We were manna. But at the same time, as to what's happening in the desert, God was teaching the Hebrew people through the in-laws of Moses, the Midianites. His wife was a Midianite, his father-in-law was Jethro, how to live with the desert. So when we came to Mindanao, we were manna for the local church, and it's evolved now to how to live with Mindanao, and we understand that also in ecological terms. How do we live with Mindanao without destroying it? Easily, you needed, even in Scripture, they contextualized the Ten Commandments as happening while they were in the desert. These commandments came down with Moses from Mount Sinai. And when you think about it in the context of the desert that they were in, the worst thing that could happen is they start fighting amongst each other. You know, husbands jealous of other people's wives, and wives lying, and people stealing, and someone sheep eating too much of the grass on the oasis, and other families taking too much of the kahoy and the sugnut and the firewood, and so on and so forth. Water too much. So you needed some kind of order to keep the ship going through the desert from oasis to oasis. But at the same time, you're doing this to help you learn, while you were learning how to live with the oasis. Mindanao is certainly our oasis. And the Columbians and everyone living here, it was the aspiration of some of the early prophets of Mindanao, Carl Gasper, that did so much for us in the early days, Rudy Gillens, other prophets, helped us live. We're always saying, let's live with Mindanao in different ways, maybe. They weren't ecological at the time, neither was I or anyone else. But they certainly wanted to live within the resources of the Mindanao Church and not destroy Mindanao in the process. Well, there there were logging companies and mining companies and everything else having free reign. Now we've become, the Colombians are noted in the Philippines through some of our work, both nationally with tribal work, nationally with ecological work, with John Dinn and his work, certainly with tribal work and the tribal ministry that the bishops have set up. Columbus and Brendan has been very much involved in that. And so this has helped us evolve from manna to working to build communion with all creatures in Mindanao. One of the forefathers, for me it certainly was Neil Fraser, who died on the 21st of April. Some of us might remember him briefly. He died on the same day as my classmate from Chile, Mike Cody, and Mick Murray, who was very much prominent during that time too. Yeah. And so that was the 21st, which happened to be Earth Day. And Neil, along with many others in that time, Sean McDonough and others, helped us realize that the Earth is a book in itself and sacred. And it's appropriate that he die on Earth Day. His ashes will be brought here at Christmas time and spread over Melinda. Yeah. So, and the family will have a reunion, and there'll be a contextualization of his life in the context of his love for the earth and his family, and how he worked to build both of them together without pitting the life. Our prayer, first of all, to Cornelius Cleary in catechesis and other things. He wrote a book, or at least a pamphlet of some sort, on the Gwangju insurrection in Korea. Pray for him a prayer. Lord, hear our prayer.